About another 20 seconds. And you can work on these later if you want to too, if you need more time to think. You're not turning these in, by the way. These are for you. Changing your answers already then, huh? All right. Thanks for honoring people. We do know that, some of us can process while I'm talking, and some of us need this downtime to really process. That's why we do this. So those of you that didn't need this time, thanks for honoring those that did and not talking. That really means a lot. I'm a talker. I'm the one that could talk through this whole thing. But I learned to honor that because about half of you, that's really important to do this. And sorry I didn't do it a little sooner. You would have processed stuff a little better. But we got just a few minutes here to finish up. I wanted to kind of now give you some principles that will help you move these goals. Because the hardest thing sometimes is to go, okay, so now that I got this, and one of the difficulties of doing group kind of coaching, which is really what this is, one of the difficulties is all of you in relationships and places in relationships that are different. And so just like I said with the firstborns, I can't tell everybody what they're supposed to do because it wouldn't be right for you. The same thing applies to what you've just written down. And what you need to do is very unique to you and your relationship. Because you know where you're at and what you need in your relationship. And so I want to give you some principles that will help you do that. And I call it the 110 and 51 rule. And it's one of the things I talk about in counseling right away, especially with couples in crisis, and they find it really helpful. And that's this, is that what marriage should be from a biblical context is you should be 110% committed to it. If you get married and you truly mean it when you say that this is a union put together between you and your partner and God, I would say ultimately you're not marrying your partner as much as you're making a commitment to God. And we seem to forget that. And I will tell you that you didn't marry a spouse, you married into a partnership, really a triangular partnership with God. And your commitment is more to Him than it is to your spouse. And that's why I say you should be 110% committed. On the third session of our thing, we're going to talk about Hosea. Talk about a guy who was committed. That's where we're going the third week. So we'll talk more about that. But I want you to think of that mindset as to be 110% committed to the relationship. And just knowing that, if you and your partner are both 110% committed to the process, you can withstand a lot of storms. Because you know that Balaam is not an option. Balaam's not an option because I'm in this. You're going to have to kill me to get me out of this. I'm not suggesting that. That's always the joke, right? It's my wife and I have never, ever said the word divorce. Murder, yes, but never divorce. But seriously, I will tell you that my wife and I, when we got married, the day we got married, before we got married, we talked about the fact that divorce is not a word in our vocabulary. It doesn't exist. What is divorce? Some of y'all were in here, I think before we got started, I was talking about black and white brains. When we get in crisis, that's what we tend to think. And I see that all the time in my counseling room. It's either, oh, this has got to be great, or we're getting a divorce. That's black and white thinking. Do you know how many other options there are than divorce? 1,000. So like these women I told you that, they're in love and the guy he knocks on the front door and he wants to let back in. Should I let him in? I'm like, heavens no. Well, you mean I should divorce him? No, you shouldn't divorce him either. It's called boundaries. 110% committed means you have boundaries. This is the only guidelines in which our relationship can operate. I'm not saying you put up with anything that's not inside your boundaries. But you negotiate and say, look, I'm not living like this anymore. I'm not living like this anymore. I was just at a conference with Rachel Hollis. Y'all know who Rachel Hollis is? She's a little controversial in the Christian world. She's like, is she a Christian? Is she not? She curses.
Did she write Wash Your Face?
She did. Girl, wash your face. So I just saw her in a conference. And I saw her do something. By the way, I like her. I'm just going to throw it all in. I think I'm tired as Christians being the Christian circular firing squad. Oh, well, she didn't do this right. We're doing that too much. We got to let it go. But I saw her confront a woman that was just, and this woman, she's chronically ill. She's been with her husband for 24 years, and this husband treats her like dirt. Like dirt. This man treats her like dirt. But she's like, well, so why are you still with him? Well, I need to get my business up and running. She's like, that's not why you're still with him. And she's like, look, I'm not telling you to divorce him. I'm telling you to say, look, dude, it's time to fish or cut bait. That's called a boundary. So I'm amazed at these women that come to me, that these guys do horrible things. They come knock on the door, baby, I promise I'll never do it again. And they let him back in the door. That's not what you should be doing. That's not 110%. 110% says, great, I'm willing to give you another try. So you can pick me up next Friday for a date. Guess what? Half the guys that I can't do that. I need it in now. This is my house. Not anymore, it's not. Not after what you did. So you can pick me. By the way, bring a babysitter. Next Friday at 7. We'll go out for dinner. What can she learn within a week? If the guy's willing to do that, there's a chance. But half the guys at that point, I'm not doing that, and they'll walk away. And guess what? You just saved yourself at least 6 months more of putting up with the knucklehead. It's about boundaries. It's about you having your boundaries. That's part of 110% commitment. But there's also the 51, and I love this. This is so biblical, and it's what we're missing in our culture so much. I should write a book, 51. To break people out of that black and white, 100% or nothing habit, I will sit a couple down that just says horrible things about each other, and we're doing this wrong. I said, no, let me ask you a question. All your relationship has to be is 51% better than being alone. Think about that for a minute. If your goal in a relationship, the healthy goal, the first finish line of a relationship is if I can get to where my relationship is 51% better than it is like being alone, we have a good marriage. Passing is not 70% marriage, it's 51. Now, let me clarify something. I'm not talking about, well, he beats me 49% of the time. That's not what I'm talking about. That is not a 51-49 marriage. All right, if there's abuse, that is not 51%. But if 51% of what your dynamics are good, and 49% of it's bad, we got a good marriage. And then everything after that 51, the other 49% is gravy. You will never get to 100% marriage, folks, ever. But people have that belief, and one of them that's so based in a fallacy, the term that drives me crazy in our culture, just absolutely, I want to rip it out of the dictionary, is the term soulmate. Gosh, I hate that word. You know why? Because the assumption is my soulmate's 100%. If I have my soulmate, we're perfect. If I have my soulmate, we go ice skating in Manhattan and snowflakes start falling while we kiss each other for the first time. Which is how every romantic comedy ends, right? Exactly. And we've watched some, I love, my friend Mark Gungor calls that female porn. That's what it is. It's female porn. It's perfect. It's soulmate. He's my soulmate. And by the way, the other line dynamic of that is they always take a guy that's a good-for-nothing cheater that, is with 8 women, and 1 woman can tame him. Now he will never do that again. Baloney. That's character. If the guy was doing that before he met you, eventually he's going to do it again. That's that be picky in the first place. But anyway, I'll get off my Hallmark Channel rant here. But stop with the soulmates, because what soulmate does, it does 2 horrible things in your relationship. Number 1, it makes the assumption that if you find somebody else, that the magic light bulbs go off. You go, oh, you must be my soulmate. I must have been wrong about the first one. That's fallacy number 1. And fallacy number 2 is just as bad, if not even worse, and that is, oh, I found my soulmate, so I don't have to work anymore. She has to put up with all my crap. I don't have to take her out on dates. I don't have to take care of my body. I don't have to get dressed and look nice for my spouse because they're my soulmate. They got to put up with me the way they are. That is so not biblical. I won't say the other words. That's what it is. But the goal here is if your relationship is 51% better than being alone, then guess what? You got something. So that's always the goal. If you're in crisis, get it to 51%. And then from there, you can grow. And I told you I'm married to an Eeyore, and I'm a Tigger. The first 8 or 9 years of our marriage, every year in our anniversary, July 18th. By the way, we had the same birthday. That's why I can remember our anniversary. I don't have to remember our birthday. We have the same one. So I can remember our anniversary. It's July 18th. So every year on our anniversary, I take my wife out to dinner. In the first 8 years, every year over dinner on our anniversary, I'd look across, I'd grab her hands, and I'd look her in the eye, and I'd say, so, on a scale of 1 to 10, how we doing? This guy, yeah. I know I'm good, yeah. And every year, I'd have a number in my head. 8, 8.5, 9. Every year, she was at least 1 to 2 points below my number. We're 6. It's just 6 right now. 5, 5.5. I don't think I ever got below a 5. And they'd be like, really? That's it? So after about 8 years, finally, before we even go out, we're getting dressed to go out for dinner. She looks at me, she says, don't ask me that number thing anymore. I don't want to. We're not doing it anymore. Okay, fine. Because then I'd always, usually she'd not want to give me a number. I'd say, you're 9. We're 9. I think you're 9. You're amazing. 7, 6. I was a springboard diver in college. I think that's where that came from. I'd be like, oh, that dive wasn't that good? I'd expect a 9. I'm getting 6s and 5s. So, I told you after 9 years what happened. And this guy made a pass on my wife. And I came back and I said, I don't know what I'll do. My wife said, it's okay. I'm no longer a pastor. And one of the reasons why, not the only reason, not the main reason, is my wife hates being a pastor's wife. So I can. I can do stuff like this. And I don't have to put her in that fishbowl she didn't like. I can tell you I've learned to be so much better. I've learned to start with that 51% and say, how can I make it better and better and better and better? So we went 20 more years. Never asking that question. We went to our anniversary last summer. We went up here to Vivace, isn't it? Up here we went for lunch. Couldn't afford supper, so we went for lunch. Yeah, it's the first time we'd ever went for lunch for our anniversary. It shows we're getting old too, right? We're going to be asleep. We're going to be asleep, babe. We can't go to dinner for our anniversary. So we go to lunch and we're eating there, and it's pretty, and they've got the pretty view, and Italian, feeding themselves. My wife loves dessert, so on our anniversary, we're getting dessert. So she orders the dessert. She looks across and grabs my hand. She says, so, you're going to ask me what number we are this year? I'm like, I haven't done that for 20 years. Why do you want me to do it? She says, I want you to ask me this year. I said, really? I said, okay. She made me verbalize it. So on a score of 1 to 10, how am I doing? Now, I'll tell you this story in 2 weeks. My wife's a breast cancer survivor. And that's a story for another night. Dark night of the soul. A journey that no one should ever have to take, but the results of the journey are pretty amazing. My wife grabbed my hand and looked across the water glasses. She said, you're a 9.5. If you knew my wife, you'll know I'll never get a 10. That is impossible. So a 9.5 from her is shooting the moon.
That's a fine line.
Yeah. But that's my goal for you, okay? So on those blue and pink cards before we leave, I hope you'll take some time. If you got some questions you want me to answer, whatever you want. Like I said, you don't have to put your name. You don't have to be embarrassed. If it's about sex or intimacy, I don't care. I'll talk about it. Well, if people don't want to talk about it, they can leave the room, but we're all adults in here. God created us with the ability to be sexual, and it's, I think, a very important part of who we are. But that's what we'll look at the next 2 weeks, is some more of the dynamics of what it's like to be in your own marriage. All right? Any questions? Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I'm going to honor your time and let you go 10 seconds early. See you in 2 weeks. Bring a friend. Bring a friend. No, we're skipping Halloween. So it'll be not next week's Halloween, and then we'll meet the week after, and then the week after that. So.
I did have a question. I just didn't want to drag on the class.
Either way,
Well, you're
put it on the blue card too, but we can talk about it now.
Soulmate thing. I was just wondering your point of view. Do you believe that God would be like a matchmaker? Would
No.
he put two people together?
I believe he's part of that process. Do I feel God called me to marry my wife? Yes. But I also believe that if one of us, if my wife were to die of breast cancer, I think God could easily have had a second wife for me down the road. And the problem with that is, what if I'm living in sin and I miss the wife God wanted for me in the first place? That's my problem with that dynamic. I just find that to be unbiblical from that context. And to say, there's 7 billion people, almost 8 now, billion people on this planet. Who am I to say there's only one other person for me?
For your kid, for your son.
What do they want?
Now, once you've chosen, guess what? You better put the spotlight on them, and you need to act that way, but you don't need to act as if, now I've found my soulmate, I don't have to worry about anything else. That's a good way to lose your partner. I say you should date harder after you get married than you dated before you got married. Because the consequences are much greater. If you lose your relationship after you get married, the consequences are much greater, even legally and financially, than they were. And yet, I know almost all of us worked our butts off when we dated our spouse before we got married, and we got married, and within a year, it's like, oh, whatever. No big deal. My wife and I, we've 31 years, almost every weekend, 31 years, my wife and I have gone on a date. And sometimes it's to the park to walk, because we didn't have any money, but every weekend.
Blue striped shirt or something. You can find
Yeah,
one
write that down, and maybe I'll revisit it.
on top of the blue shirt.
Did you want your blue and pink cards?
Yeah, give me your blue and pink cards before you leave, or you can stack them up here if you don't even know it's you. No, my anniversary. My birthday is August 29th, and my wife's. We're 3 years apart, though. We found that out on our first date, too, that night. We ended up going to lunch at Craig's Catfish and supper at a Chinese place. And that's where I said, when's your birthday? August 20th. So when you're showing your license on your first date, you're in trouble. All right. Let's stack there.
So we were supposed to walk up here and ask you what happens about two firstborns.
Oh,
I think I know that one. We went to a marriage class from the
Yeah.
very beginning because her parents were older generation. My parents are horrible examples.
okay.
So we thought we'd just go. And one of the things says, just try arguing naked. It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Kevin Lehman said. He says, slowly, as you're arguing, move to your bedroom, lock the door, and take off all your
What happens,
clothes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we thought that was pretty
Because-
fun.
because-
I haven't attempted it, but
And as firstborns, you literally take everything too seriously. Yeah, and especially when he was just telling me the dynamics of your families. Now, my wife and I both both of our parents stayed married 50 plus years. Her mom just passed away this summer. But my parents have a pretty healthy relationship, even though they don't handle conflict very well.
Yeah.
Her parents, they do conflict, but they have had a pretty dysfunctional relationship. So we had a little bit of that. But I think you guys have, what y'all's relationship ends up being is like this so much. It's like you're like, oh, I don't want this to fail because that's all I've ever known. And you're like, hey, buddy, get back here. We got to work on this, right? And so that's what y'all have to fight.
Both of our parents have been married for a long time. Hers are a lot further along. Makes me happy. My parents are distraught. They're still married, but
Okay.
it's very, very one-sided.
Okay.
So honestly, I would like to get your information because I want to pass you off to her. I think she needs it.
Okay.
I really think she.
Yeah, I brought some cards. I didn't set them out, but yeah, you can contact me. Oh, firstborns. See, here they are.
Yeah, what?
You're first.
Well, you said you would tell us.
He's a firstborn married to a firstborn?
Yes.
Here you go. Here's a card.
There's three of them.
So Kevin Lehman, this is Kevin Lehman's advice, and they already heard it, is we went back there, and as soon as we gathered, he said, you came, I knew you come, and he said, here's my advice, is the next time you get in an argument, I want you to, as you argue, don't quit arguing, slowly move to your bedroom, lock the door, and take off all your clothes, and try to keep arguing naked. He said, because you take everything too seriously. Firstborns take everything too seriously. And we argue over many things that we shouldn't argue over. You know,
Try arguing.
and you can't. So what's funny is, so this was in Albuquerque. So we're driving home. So here's what's funny is, yeah, guys like that. It's like, oh no, he says like it's not that. You know what's funny is my wife and I, we've been married probably 10 years at that point. We heard that information. On the way home, we realized that our first Christmas, we had already figured that out in our own way. And it wasn't taking off our clothes. It was, we're at my parents' arguing. And she's like, get in the car. We're going to argue. We're going to drive around town. And we pull in this gas station, and right in front of us is this big green trash can. And it's like overloaded with black trash bags full of wrapping paper from somebody's Christmas. And my wife, just with all the seriousness in the world, points at it. It's like, you're a big bag of trash. And I just started laughing. I just lost it. And she started laughing. And so from then on, every time our arguments got too escalated, one of us would say, you big bag of trash. And it would shh. It would be our equivalent of arguing naked. But like I said, the only reason that's for firstborns is because so many other marriages don't deal with conflict. They avoid it. Firstborns, it's their natural thing. We don't avoid it, usually. We go running in, bare-knuckled, going, oh, yeah, I'm winning this argument. You know, we won't even... So I played tennis in high school, so my wife likes tennis. So I remember we're dating. I said, let's go play tennis. One time. When she realized that she would never be good enough to beat me, I'm not playing. That's that dynamic of, oh, yeah, well, if I can't ever beat you at this, then we're not going to do it. Together, that's one thing we won't do.
That's why we don't argue anymore. I know I'm going to lose.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably say this in a couple weeks, but one of my favorite lines that I've learned is, I'm a man and I'm sorry. Sometimes that's all I can say is, I'm a man and I'm sorry.
But you've already heard that one. It says happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
They changed it. It's happy spouse, happy house.
Oh, there you go.
That way it can go both ways.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Glad you liked
See you
it.
in 2 weeks.
All righty. We'll see you then. Whew.
Although that might solve the problem, right?
You didn't hear what he said. He was saying that you go and take all your clothes off.
All right, you dropped on the floor what we were looking.
I did. You card? Have a card.
Thank you.
You have two if you want them.
Oh, I think we'll see.
I'm trying to reorder them. That's why I'm trying to give them away. I need to change some information on them.
Okay, I was trying to be nice and collect your cards, but I forgot people were writing stuff. Some people.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I think this is all of them.
There you
Oh,
go.
there's a couple more over there.
They're empty.
These ones are blank that appear.
Good.
So,
I'll keep those in another pile. Got a few more blank ones back here.
I know you were talking about Transform, or our group is actually called, our marriage class is called Transform.
Oh, you know what? I'm supposed to start teaching in y'all's class real soon. Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I've just started emailing
Yeah.
Rebecca, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's our teaching coordinator.
Yeah. Oh,
They're not playing.
okay. Mix them in. Okay. Yeah, and I told I was talking to Denisha about, what I do, and she said, yeah, we got a class that doesn't have any guy teachers. So I said, okay. Well, I teach them. My ABF is brain freeze. That one.
That's a good name.
That one. Actually, there's several more here tonight. Peak. Parents of every age kid. That's what it is. Peak. Which is funny because now my youngest just is 18, so we're now empty nesters. See you guys. Thanks for coming.
So you're like, yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's hard for people to transition in CASIS from
Yeah.
different ABFs.
Yeah.
So like it'll get to a point where you're like, well, do I just leave and go somewhere else? Can I?
Yeah.
Is it weird?
Well-
I thought it was interesting though that this transformational you're talking about, and our group is transformed and we are transforming, but I think what you talked about is exactly what our group needs to be.
Yeah.
Because it's going through a lot of emotions and not trust, and then also we need more serving. It's everything.
Yeah.
Well, they're serving, but it's
Yeah.
not in the ABF.
Yeah.
It's more like out.
Well, and so, I'm obviously talking about this from the relationship
Yes,
standpoint.
yes.
But you're right, the Bible talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's where you all got your name, I'm sure. But yeah, that's what that is. And to think about it as, of when we, as Christians, are supposed to let Christ be revealed through us. And every day we get up and make a decision and we go, okay, am I going to go through life today for myself, or am I going to lay myself down and put Christ on, literally, and walk through the day transformed so that people don't see me, they see Jesus. So that's the superhero. So I'm Clark Kent, Superman is Jesus. And when I act like Jesus in my marriage, I'm all my years of counseling. So when I was a pastor, I counseled a lot of couples and I started with teenagers. It's another thing I've studied is I was a youth pastor and then I planted a church. And I had a bunch of those teenagers that I'd raised as a youth group for 7.5 years. They got married and some got divorced and came to my church, and I was their pastor. So I got to see their dynamics of success and failure, of how they chose relationships as teenagers, work itself out as young adults in my church. And that really, made me grasp. And what I can say is all these years, all the counseling I've done, both as a pastoral counselor professionally and as a pastor that counseled a lot, is I've never once had a couple come in and had either, occasionally I've had one, but never had both of them come in and say, you know what, I'm just here to serve my spouse. We're having troubles, but I'm just serving my spouse.
Why are you here?
That's what I'm saying is I've never had that. It's always, as soon as the door shuts, it's like, well, she won't do this. Mm-hmm. And it's always selfish.
One-sided.
It's never let me serve. She won't let me serve. Now I did counsel I do have one couple that I know of that, and this happens, and we may get to talk about it another week, is, you familiar with the love languages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the frustrating things about love languages is that, what Gary Chapman says, is that when we get back, after we've been married for a while, we go back to what our love languages are.
Default.
And so I had a couple once where she was chronically ill, and his love language was acts of service. So he gave her breakfast, he did all the housework. The guy worked his butt off for her. And she grew to despise it. I'm tired of you feeding me. I'm tired of you serving me. Mm-hmm. And that's his love language. And I remember coming to me in tears, just going, what do I do? She ended up having an affair. And yet it was him. He was living out that. And I would say it was codependent is what it was. And that you can do that is where that's a problem. If one of you is serving and the other one's not serving, that's what we call a codependent relationship. Mm-hmm. That's not healthy. But I will tell you that if neither one of you are codependent, there's not a chance. And that the Christ-like way is to be codependent, but not, that's why I say boundaries. You got to be serving, but you got to say, no, but I'm a respecter of my own person, and I won't give in.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody that needs to set boundaries and doesn't want to, or doesn't think that they need to?
So here's what I've learned over years and years of counseling. If you aren't willing to work harder than me, I can't do much for you. Until you've hit rock bottom and you're ready to work, and until you're ready to say, okay, I now know I can't do this.
I'm just hoping we'll get to the opportunity where she can recognize that there is people out there that can help her.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
I grabbed your card.
Yeah.
It's my mother that we're coming to this class, and not so much that we need anything out of it, but I'm like, man, I want to learn how we can help
Also
my
want
parents.
some of your cards too.
Sure. But that's, unfortunately, I got to say that if they're not ready, then they're not ready. And there's nothing I can say. You've had that experience, haven't you, where like you get told something and you realize, okay, somebody's told me this before, but this time it's stuck.
Now it actually
And sometimes, so usually what the relationship you're describing, so if you take a passive-aggressive curve, a bell curve, it sounds like those relationships usually are a very assertive, aggressive person is with a very passive person. Yep. And unfortunately, a lot of times this person snaps. So I always say, this is the person that you read in the news that, at 2 a.m. shot her husband 20 times in the back because he was sleeping, because she snapped.
That's kind of, we're somewhat afraid of it, I can't see, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just saying though. I'm not saying your mom's doing it.
That's where we're at. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but I feel like my parents should have gotten divorced a while back because of the way that the relationship is done.
Yeah.
He is cheated, and there's lots of things that happen. It's like now we've gotten to a point where he's no longer allowed at our house,
Yeah.
and we're going to take a step, but it hurts her. She
Yeah.
can't be around the grandkids, so we'll get more into it some other time.
All right, but yeah, sorry. I wish I had better news to tell you, but that's, and y'all need to hear that though,
Right.
because you get frustrated trying to help,
Exactly.
and you're trying to help an enabler, basically, and if until as long as that's what Rachel Hollis. That's what she actually confronted these two different ladies that were both enablers,
We gotta look her up.
and I was like, wow, she got in their face. But guess what? I don't think either one of those ladies heard what she was saying. So, you want some cards? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, as far as like people in our family, like studying, then we need to like cut boundaries with them.
Yeah.
As far as like, we're not gonna talk about their relationship or,
Yeah.
I don't know. but-
See ya.
Cause
Thank
like,
you.
You're welcome. Awesome.
he
Thanks for
has
coming.
a brother that has this, they're having issues, and it's like,
Well, you know what I didn't do? I didn't pass a list around. I'm supposed to get a list of whoever's here. Oh well. Oh well. I was not perfect. 51%.